I'm here today with Professor Barbara Hallensleben, Professor of Dogmatics and Theology of Ecumenism at the University of Freiburg in Switzerland. We're here in New Haven today for a consultation on the future of theology. Barbara, if I may.
Of course.
So great to have you here.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Well, we're going to talk about the future of theology, but I thought we might start with the present first. And all things being equal, it's good to start on the positive side. So let's start here. What is right with theology today?
So first of all, I apologize for my bad English. As Freiburg is a bilingual university, I had to improve a lot my French. I need some Russian for my studies, so I lost a lot of my English, but I will try my best. And of course, I speak within my own experience in theology in Switzerland. I received my formation in Germany, so this is the horizon. Also a little bit with a look at Eastern Europe, because we have a lot of students also from Eastern Europe, so there might be differences. But in my immediate context, I think what is going well is the simple fact that theology is fully integrated as a partner in the scientific community. So we are a state university, and the Faculty of Theology is one of the 5 main faculties and has fully access to the whole infrastructure, to all the means of research, teaching, conversation. And this is a real advantage and also a challenge. It means also that, at least in Switzerland, in Germany, in Western Europe, these academic standards became the standard for priests and pastors in the religious communities. So this high standard of theological reflection is transmitted to society in the form of church life, and this might be an advantage, but should be cultivated. What I see as an advantage is also, and we feel it in Freiburg, that a lot of ecumenical exchange is possible in the real exchange with professors and also students. So Freiburg is a real place of ecumenical learning now, and this is possible within the Faculty of Theology of Catholic tradition. So we have Reformed, Evangelical, Orthodox, and also some Catholic students, and they encourage each other because they bring in their own traditions, and this is a quite creative challenge to them to reflect on these differences, and it helps also us to teach. If I have to teach on what the Pope means for the Catholic community, and I do it in front of Reformed and Orthodox students, I have to reformulate my theology. And this is really a wonderful experience, which I did not have in the same way in Germany, but which I strongly have in Freiburg. So I think also what is going well is that the sensibility that we have to deal with questions of today's society is growing. But maybe here also the ambiguity starts in which way we do it. Maybe I should add also, if I see my own experience of the development of academic theology. When I started, my mother was horrified that I decided to start theology because she thought, you will never have any possibility to work anywhere because this is a field for men. And just to see what happened in these last generations, that theology is not only a field for priests and men, but really became a quite pluralistic field for lay people and priests and for all kind of approaches, for different approaches to theology. Of course, sometimes with tensions, but sometimes with a very fruitful exchange.
So, as well as things are going, there are always, in every field and every endeavor, there are challenges. What are some of the challenges that theology is facing in your context right now?
In this sense, the manifesto you prepared here really formulates in a fantastic way exactly what we feel as difficulties in theology, which have to be, first of all, seen and then dealt with. So I think this, and you see the ambiguity of what I presented as the positive elements in theology, they can turn out to become also a temptation. So the growing possibility of specialization within the different theological disciplines turns out to become a loss of unity of a common project in theology, even with this idea that no colleague can intervene in my field because he's not even able to read the newest research and to be on my level of conceptuality and so on. So, and this creates really a separation within theology and the risk to lose the common project. The common project also as a lived community of professors who all become the popes on their own chairs. Then I see the tension to the growing discipline of religious studies, who very often has been established and is going to teach against the project of theology. And maybe this is not the problem, because in religious studies there are a lot of fruitful research which is very useful for theology, but the problem starts maybe where within theology the idea comes up that for theology it would be the best to transform to religious studies on Christianity. And this is happening inside theology, sometimes without being remarked, and with the idea that this is the very best way to be integrated in the scientific community.
So what is that distinction for you between theology, as it ought to be, and the religious studies mode of studying Christianity? What makes the difference?
So the idea of theology, as you also mentioned in the manifesto, even with reference to Thomas Aquinas, which is of course at least in the French-speaking part of my faculty, which is in the center of our teaching, that theology has as its subject, and Thomas says subject, not object, God and everything in the world in its relation, in its reference to God. It means that theology has a kind of confessional basis. So faith, not only the individual, the private faith of the teacher, but faith as a tradition, as a way of seeing the world in this wisdom of knowing the inner unity and referring everything to this unity. Whereas religious studies refers to religious phenomena, and this is the first reduction. And theology has the tendency now to stop and no longer to refer to other elements than to religious phenomena. So, for example, stops to refer to the political world, to the social reality, to the administration, to natural sciences. So I just wrote a short article on theology as a science of nature, not as a, so with a kind of playing with words. And the editors proposed me to change the title because they did not believe that I really wanted to say that we have something to say about nature. So, and in this sense, this temptation to treat religions from outside as a kind of sociological phenomena reduces what theology is talking about to an external phenomenon. And this is useful and very helpful. It has also some critical elements for theology itself. But if this is the only approach, something is missing.
So how do you see that puts theology proper, let's say, in a difficult place in the university? It has multiple allegiances, as it were, to the church that carries the tradition, that it doesn't just study as an outsider, but participates in from within. But it also shares a common mission with the university in which it's fully integrated in places where it is. I must admit, I'm a little jealous. That's an interest. We don't often have that experience here. But how ought theology negotiate those multiple allegiances or those participation in multiple missions with the church, and at least the church and the university, and maybe also the broader pluralistic culture?
Yeah. So first of all, it's right on the formal level. So the Faculty of Theology in Freiburg has a special status because it does fully belong to the State University, but it has a threefold partnership so that the Swiss Bishops' Conference is included and the Dominican Fathers are included. So, and this gives a special status and some special elements, for example, for the election of professors and their status as they have to be recognized also by the church. But in the same way, nothing is missing to be fully integrated in the university. So maybe this kind of challenge, which is visible for the other faculties, cannot be eliminated. And maybe there is a link to what the manifesto calls a crisis. There is a kind of crisis of theology which cannot be overcome because it is its own constitution to show that the world is in a kind of permanent crisis because God arrived in Jesus Christ to lead the world into its crisis, to distinguish what good life and life which is not worth living is. And I think if it turns out to not to go well, and theology is no longer accepted in this place, maybe we will have to accept it also. So we have the responsibility to show that this crisis is fruitful and to distinguish what good and not good life is helpful also for other sciences.
Particularly the humanities, perhaps.
I do not think only humanities, because maybe some of our best partners might be the social and economical, you see, but I think it's near to one another. The economical sciences, natural sciences. Why? Because I think I observe a kind of convergence, because sciences today, more than in the last century, see their own limits now. They see that the project of conceptual reflection does not always lead to good life, to a success in what they want to show. And natural sciences, now they prove that the world is not working on the basis of fixed laws, but there is some kind of something happening by chance which by principle cannot be reduced to a law. And to accept this is, and you can see it in Einstein, you can see it in others, you can see it in Weizsäcker, leads all sciences to a kind of crisis and to a kind of challenge to accept the principal limitation of the capacity of rationality to dominate the world. And this is the crisis you call postmodernity. And I think if we try as theology to meet this internal crisis in a positive sense, this finitude of the world, we might have a chance to create an alliance. And in this sense, I think it is important that theology does not present itself as a science which knows everything better and which gives solutions to what the others do not know, but to show how you can deal with the limits of our rationality. And so in this sense, theology knows more because it goes towards a wisdom, a sapiential approach, and it knows less because it's easier for theology to deal with limits. that's my hope also, that this happens, and I feel that it happens.
So given the particular challenges of theology today and the particular opportunities of conducting theological research and teaching in the ways that you've described it, why should a young person today consider studying theology? Why is that a path? Why is that a life worth living, potentially?
So there is one part of the question, so how am I engaged to convince people to study theology? And in this sense, I would start with, I would continue with what I just said. So maybe theology, together with philosophy, is the only science who gives space to reflect on these basic questions of human life. And without any limits and without limiting the approach from the very beginning to certain objects. And this is felt by students. So even those who do not choose theology as their main subject, many of them come for smaller modules of studies. For example, saying that I have chosen to study social work or psychology, but I do not find the human soul. So I want to see if elsewhere people reflect on it, and I found theology, and this is very helpful. The other part of the question, for me, is answered by a kind of observation that the classical public of theological studies disappears. So there are very few people, students now, who prepare to become priests. Some still to become lay cooperators, ministers in parishes. But there is a very pluralistic group of students. So, and this can be really everything. So we have, for example, a doctor of medicine. She already works in a hospital, and she fully studies theology with an enormous effort just to prepare for a kind of care ethics on the basis of Christian faith, not just on psychological support. Or we have people who are really looking for a kind of purpose of their own destiny, of their own life. And they have no idea what they want to become. So for the moment, the Faculty of Theology will engage with a project for young people in schools to encourage them to study, not just to study theology, but to see their lives under the aspect of which star do you follow, taking up the biblical scene of the three kings, of the three, how do you say it? Magi finding Christ, and just to help them to express their own desire in their life. And if they will end up to study medicine or to study whatever they want, but they do it with a kind of feeling of my life has a meaning, and I am meant, I have a name, I have a face, and there is God maybe who is helping me to find my way. I think we will be as joyful as we are when some of these people choose theology. But for the other part, I just observe what is happening, and I try to accompany those who start to do theology. We have even agnostics, so who just say, I in the end want to know what theologians say. And I just say, maybe it's a kind also of crisis that we have not this homogeneous public, but it might be also a fruitful passage to finding out what young people are really looking for. And that's what we do, actually.
If that is what the future of theology looks like, if that's what we are able to offer to our students and to the societies in which we participate, I am excited to be a part of it. Barbara, thank you so much for being here and for the conversation this morning.
And thank you for all you do here, and it's a hope for us in Freiburg, and I hope some of this inspiration we will take with us to Freiburg University. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.